In the year 1588, the world held its breath. From the shores of Spain, the most formidable naval force ever assembled prepared to sail. This was the Gran Armada, the Invincible Armada, a fleet of 130 ships, carrying over 30,000 men. Its master, King Philip II, was the most powerful monarch in Christendom, ruler of a global empire upon which the sun never set. His purpose was divine, his mission absolute: to cross the treacherous English Channel, depose the Protestant Queen Elizabeth I, and return England to the Catholic fold. Philip saw Elizabeth as a heretic, a pretender to a throne he believed was rightfully his. He had poured the vast wealth of the New World into this grand crusade, convinced that God was on his side. The ships were galleons, towering castles of wood, bristling with heavy cannons designed for close-quarters combat and boarding. They were slow, cumbersome, but seemingly indestructible, a floating testament to Spanish power and piety. As this crescent-shaped behemoth moved north, it was more than an invasion force. It was a judgment, sent to crush a defiant island nation. Across the Channel, England waited, a small, scrappy nation with a navy comprised not of massive galleons, but of smaller, faster, more maneuverable race-built ships. They were commanded by men like Sir Francis Drake, a brilliant tactician and, in the eyes of the Spanish, a contemptible pirate. England's hope rested on these sea dogs and their queen. Elizabeth, facing the gravest threat of her reign, was not a monarch to cower. She traveled to Tilbury to address her troops, her words becoming a legend of defiance. Dressed in armor, she declared, "I know I have the body of a weak and feeble woman, but I have the heart and stomach of a king, and of a king of England too." Her speech electrified the nation, transforming a defense of the realm into a passionate struggle for survival and identity. The first clashes in the Channel were a brutal dance of giants and wasps. The Spanish held their formidable defensive crescent, their heavy cannons pounding away. The English ships, commanded by Lord Howard of Effingham, were too nimble to be trapped. They darted in and out, their long-range culverins chipping away at the Spanish fleet, a tactic of harassment that frustrated the Armada's commanders. The Spanish plan was to rendezvous with the Duke of Parma's army in the Netherlands, but the English navy and the Dutch sea beggars blocked their path. The Armada anchored at Calais, a moment of vulnerability. It was here the English unleashed their masterstroke. On the night of August 7th, under the cover of darkness, they sent 8 hellburners, fire ships packed with pitch, brimstone, and gunpowder, drifting silently on the tide towards the anchored Spanish fleet. Panic erupted. Spanish captains cut their anchor cables to escape the flames, breaking their unbreakable formation. The defensive crescent was shattered. The next morning, at the Battle of Gravelines, the disorganized Spanish fleet was a perfect target for the English navy. For 8 hours, the English ships pounded the galleons at close range, their superior gunnery inflicting devastating damage. The Invincible Armada was broken and battered, yet its ordeal was far from over. With the English Channel blocked, the only way home was the long, perilous route north around Scotland and down the west coast of Ireland. It was then that God, whom Philip believed was on his side, seemed to switch allegiances. A ferocious series of storms, a Protestant wind, smashed into the fleeing fleet. Galleons were torn apart by hurricane-force winds and mountainous waves. Ships were driven onto the unforgiving rocky coasts of Ireland and Scotland. Thousands of sailors who survived the wrecks were met and killed by local militias. Of the 130 ships that had set out with such magnificent purpose, fewer than half limped back to Spain. The defeat was a catastrophe for Spain. It shattered the myth of invincibility and marked the beginning of the end of its naval dominance. For England, it was a moment of national triumph, a David and Goliath victory that secured its independence and Protestantism. It heralded the dawn of England's own age of empire, built upon the sea power it had so dramatically proven. The story of the Armada is a timeless lesson in how hubris can be humbled, how innovation can overcome brute force, and how the winds of fate can shape the destiny of nations. Subscribe